Hey everyone, Chairman here doing the meta deck profile for Noiseless Frieren, also known as Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Mike and I are not quiet about how much we love Frieren, as you may have guessed from our 2-hour long product opening video. From a competitive standpoint, Frieren's most successful deck from the Japanese meta is reminiscent of a deck that was once relevant in the English meta 2 years ago, Danmachi. Like Danmachi, Frieren is an events-based deck that we haven't seen since. Like most event decks, the deck boasts a high consistency when it is able to play their events, and struggles when it cannot get a hold of them. If you are a fan of the Danmachi deck, you'll feel right at home with Frieren. The last thing to note is that, true to its name, there is one meta deck in particular that Frieren, or specifically Fern, has no trouble in slaying, so expect Frieren to be a strong counterpick option in the upcoming format. Since we've advertised Frieren as an events-based deck, let's introduce the event lineup first. The main event of the deck is Flight Magic, which we run at 4 copies. This event requires an adventure or magic character on board to be played, and can look up to 4 cards from the top of the deck and add up to 1 adventure or magic character to hand. The rest go to waiting room. This card can be played during the counter step, and is the equivalent of Torch or Hestia Knife in Goblin Slayer and Danmachi respectively. This is your main form of deck speed and costless card selection throughout the course of the game. Next, we have Magic for Fighting Lost accessories at 3 copies, which also requires an adventure or magic character to be played. When played, you can optionally draw 1, discard 1, then salvage an adventure or magic character from the waiting room, and it's also playable during the counter step. This is your main form of card selection, giving you waiting room access, while the extra draw helps you draw into cards that you can normally not draw, such as events or climaxes. Moving on to level 2 events, we have Magic that turns sweet grapes into sour ones at 2 copies. This event requires an adventure or magic character to be played as well, and always goes to the stock when played. You can choose an opponent's level 1 or higher character, and they swap it with a character in their waiting room with a lower level. This card is primarily used as a way to convert hand to stock, with the added upside of disrupting opponents' board setups and giving you an edge against decks that bring out formidable high-level threats like Kanata or standby decks. Last are the singleton events, and these do not require having an adventure or magic character to play. Ordinary offensive magic, also called Zoltrak in the show, just deals 3 damage. With how resource efficient the deck is, this can be added to the finishing turn, or even fired off at level 2 for some extra aggression. Magic to create a field of flowers grabs a character from the waiting room and then shuffles the opponent's stock into their deck, forcing them to replace the stock with random cards off the top. Flowers magic can be used on the final turn to disrupt the opponent's deck compression before going in for the kill. Just like how Frieren fights with her arsenal of magic spells, correctly utilizing your array of events is key to mastering this Frieren deck. We can finally move to talking about the Climax combos. My level 1 Climax combo of choice is Mage Fern. Her field condition makes her always 6000 power, and her Climax combo allows us to salvage either Flight Magic or Magic for Fighting Lost accessories from the waiting room when played. She also gets an additional 1000 power, bringing her up to 8000 power with Climax. Fern gives you access to your most important hand sculpting events for the mid-game to control your deck compression and give you access to the waiting room. When using her combo, prioritize getting 1 copy of Flight Magic for its flexibility, then 1 copy of Accessories Magic for the selectivity and recursion. You should try to have both events in hand at all times, with more copies of Flight Magic for extra deck speed and costless selectivity. At level 3, we're playing the Trial Deck Frieren the Slayer combo. This combo is simple in its effectiveness. When played from the hand, you can add a card from the top 3 cards of your deck. On attack with the Climax combo, discard 2 cards to deal 4 damage, and Frieren gets an additional 2000 power for the turn. We can't talk about the combo without talking about the Pursuit of Magic Frieren Brainstorm that adds an extra layer to the combo. The Brainstorm can be sent from stage to the waiting room at level 3 to play Frieren the Slayer from hand for no stock cost, effectively allowing you to turn 1 card into 2 stock. Frieren also gets hexproof until the end of your opponent's turn. This resource conversion can decrease the Frieren combo's turn stock cost from 6 all the way down to 0. Allowing you to use that stock on Zoltrak, Flower Magic, or Brainstorms and other effects to grab the necessary pieces for triple Frieren combo. With Frieren able to grab a card from the top 3 cards of the deck, It's easy to assemble triple combo with some extra juice on top each game once you get familiar with how the deck runs. Overall, this 8 Pants Frieren deck is an aggressive and consistent deck. By utilizing events for deck speed and recursion, the deck aims to play climaxes every single turn while easily keeping resources up for an all-out attack at level 3. With so many events to manage and keep track of, this is definitely a deck for advanced players and skilled pilots. You'll need to know exactly how much hand and stock you need at all times, how many cards to mill with events, and what cards you need to grab now versus grabbing later with events during the counter step. It will be a difficult deck to master, especially if you're a newer player, but don't worry. I'll have some tips and tricks at the end of the video, and ultimately, it's about the journey and joy of learning Magic. I mean the deck. Before we can get there, we need to cover the rest of the cards in the list. Let's start at level 0 with Mirrored Lotus Bracelet Fern. When she's played, you can look at up to 2 cards from the top of the deck, send any number of them to the waiting room, and put the rest back on top of the deck. If you know Hololive, this is the same effect as the Mio Drop Search that's currently serving time on the ban list. Fern's second ability allows her to reverse opposing level 0 characters when she gets reversed, allowing her to pull her own weight in the early game. This card is an instrumental part of the deck's game plan, whether confirming cards to add with events, milling cards before a brainstorm to increase the chances of hitting, or to confirm upcoming triggers. Most good turns start with playing down a copy of this Fern. Next, we have Blue Moon Weed's Himmel. This Himmel has a single powerful effect. When he gets sent to the waiting room, you can clock a card from your hand to search the deck for an adventure or magic character. Then, if there are less than 3 cards in memory, Himmel can send a copy of himself from waiting room to memory. We need Himmel in memory for Pursuit of Magic Frieren to activate her effect at level 3, but Himmel is in general a fantastic card at level 0, able to get a character from the deck without paying stock and giving us a way to clock specific cards from the hand. Speaking of clocking cards, the Great Mage Seri is another way to increase your clock in order to level up on demand. Seri uses 1 stock and 1 clock to search the deck for a level 1 or lower character, which is one of the best ways of grabbing Fern Climax combo. You may think that 2 copies is a bit low, but the deck has a lot of other powerful effects that are fighting for early game stock, and we have other cards like Himmel and even Fly Magic at level 1 to help us get the level 1 combo pieces. Seri does have a second effect to pay 1 stock and discard an event to grab an event from the waiting room, which can be used to access specific events in clutch scenarios. Moving on, along with 4 copies of the Trial Deck Frieren Brainstorm, we're also running 2 copies of Dependable Mage Fern, who is also a Brainstorm. 6 copies of Brainstorms seem excessive, but the Frieren Brainstorm is necessary for both color and as a part of the level 3 turn, and Frieren's draw effect lacks selectivity for the mid-game. Fern gives us that valuable Salvage Brainstorm, along with a pretty crazy first effect. Up to 3 times a turn, when you play an event, you can look at the next 2 cards of the deck and rearrange them. This effect activates on both players' turns, allowing you to do some tricky things during your opponent's turn. For example, by using an event during the counter step against an attack that is dealing 1 damage, you can move a Climax to the second card of the deck to purposely take the damage, and then guarantee a cancel for the next attack. Alternatively, use an event during the counter step of the last attack of the turn, and move a Climax on top if you want to draw the other card you see, or move the Climax to the bottom if you don't want to draw the other card. As you can see, Fern adds yet another layer of complexity and skill expression to this deck, and rewards players for maximizing their event usage across both turns. Moving on to the utility level 0s, all at 1 copy apiece. Mage Frieren is a level 0 bottom deck bomb and Climax swap on the same card. This combination of utility effects is extremely powerful, allowing Frieren to perform multiple critical functions. Next is Magic to See Through Clothing Fern, who has a unique effect to choose an opponent's stage position, and all markers associated with that stage position get sent to the waiting room. That's right, this is the legendary Magic to See Through Sorcerer King Ainz. Fern gets played, looks at Ainz, says, "So small," and Ainz just loses every single goat marker and your Overlord opponent drops to the ground in shambles. Even when she's not judging Ainz's size, Fern has a handy utility effect to grab any card from the top 3 cards of your deck. This ability can be activated when played or sent to the waiting room from stage, making her that much more flexible and useful. Finally, we have Unnecessary Spendings Frieren, who I think is very necessary. When played, you can discard an event or climax to salvage an adventure or magic character from the waiting room. Sometimes the deck can be clunky with a bunch of unplayable events and climaxes in the hand, and this Frieren can help convert those cards into important characters from the waiting room. If you're having trouble with these clunky hands, consider increasing copies of this Frieren, it'll help. At level 1, alongside the Climax combo, we're playing 2 copies of an Older Woman Frieren. Whenever we play an event, Frieren gets plus 3000 power, bringing her to 7000 total, and this activates during the opponent's turn as well. When she attacks, she gives all of your characters the ability to pay 1 when triggering a Climax. If you do, place the top card of the deck into stock, replacing the stock that you paid out, and then you can optionally draw 1 and discard 1. This effectively gives you a way to replace the triggered Climax with a random blind stock, as well as filter out the Climax salvaged by the Pants trigger. Once the resource engine is online, fielding 1 Frieren alongside 2 Ferns is a great way to ensure Climaxes don't get lost to stock or hand, and helps keep them going back into the deck after a refresh. The deck also runs 1 character counter, Cold Glare Fern. Setting aside how badly I want Fern to look at me like that, this counter has the added effect of milling the opponent equal to the number of adventure or magic characters on your field. This kind of deck disruption effect can be brutal in the right circumstances, so you'll want to keep this counter as an option. When I look at this card, I can practically hear the Macross Delta fans crying in the not so distant future. Alright, only a few more tech options left at levels 2 and 3. Passing through the checkpoint, Frieren is our answer to big level 3 boards at level 2. Not only can she remove an over-level character by herself, but she can give another character plus 1500 times the number of events in the waiting room when she attacks. With the 11 events in the deck, that power buff can get out of hand quickly, allowing even a level 0 Fern to topple level 3s with ease. Frieren Dozing Off is the Weiss Schwarz local shop tournament promo for the month of November. Her combination of giving additional soul and bouncing an opponent's character is crucial for dealing with floodgate effects like Shauna, and giving extra soul manipulation to mix in with our final turn. Last but certainly not least, Homeland Flower Frieren and Himmel is an early play level 3 when you have 4 or more other characters. They heal on play and have an extra 2000 power during your turn, and on attack, pay 3, discard 2, burn 4 ability. This burn seems expensive, but having access to this amount of damage before level 3 is worth the price. With both Zoltrak and this early play, you can assemble a formidable finishing turn even if the opponent tries to lock you out of hitting level 3. While not every deck runs this card due to the additional yellow color requirement, both Mike and I have found great success with the burn effect grabbing key wins at opportune moments. If you're not convinced, Precious Items Frieren is a more standard early play healer alternative that adds a bit more stability with her hand encore effect. But I would highly suggest trying out the Frieren and Himmel and seeing just how much this deck can accomplish. Alright, let's talk strategy. For the mulligan, the important cards to grab are the Himmel and Seri level 0s, as those cards can help bridge into other cards while being good attackers in the early game. You should also try to grab a Fern Brainstorm as soon as possible, along with keeping as many copies of the Fern combo as you can get away with. If you're going second, consider keeping 1 copy of the Fern level 0 Reverser to deal with whatever your opponent plays going first. Whether to keep the level 1 Climax in your opening hand is debatable. Personally, I would consider discarding the Climax if the rest of the hand isn't very good, in order to draw into more cards. With 8 Pants triggers, there's a good chance you'll trigger it and get it back soon enough. The early game is about getting to the ideal setup as fast as possible. By level 1, you'll want to have 2 copies of the Fern combo, a good third attacker, either another Fern combo or the level 1 Frieren, and the Fern Brainstorm in the back row. This setup allows you to salvage 2 events per Climax play. Use the red event and Brainstorm to salvage Ferns to loop the combo on the following turn, and use the blue event to mill through the deck and refresh optimally. At level 2, go for the Grapes event to disrupt the opponent's setup, and use Frieren and Himmel's burn if they're caught unprepared and uncompressed. The moment you hit level 3, go all in on triple Frieren combo, plus Zoltrak, plus Flowers event, plus whatever else you need to close out the game. The next part, we'll be talking about some more advanced concepts regarding the deck, such as when to use event counters and how many cards to mill. In general, using an event counter that mills the deck like Flying Magic is better on later attacks. You have the information of how much damage you did or did not take in the first 2 attacks, informing you of your compression and how many cards to mill. Remember that milling cards, drawing cards, and taking damage are all random. You have no way of knowing where your climaxes will be, only how many are left in the deck. Because of this, when using flight magic to mill during your opponent's turn, think instead of how many cards you want left in your deck rather than trying to mill into a cancel. Here's a good example. You are at level 1 with 5 cards in clock, and you have 1 climax and 5 cards in your deck. Your opponent attacks you for 2 damage. How many cards do you mill? My answer would be to mill 3 cards first, and then mill the 4th card if you milled a climax in the first 3. By milling 3 cards, you guarantee that your clock will not go to the waiting room before the refresh, which is a lot of bonus compression you get for no cost. If you had only milled 2 cards and the climax was on the bottom of the deck, you would lose all the clock compression as well as the climax, which stays out during damage resolution. But if you mill 3 cards, best of all, if you have the Fern Brainstorm in play, after you mill the 3 cards, you can use the Fern to arrange so that your climax will always be on top, canceling and going back into the refresh. There are also important sequencing decisions during your turn as well. Consider starting your turns by playing Mirrored Lotus Bracelet Fern. If you see a card you like, use Flight Magic to pick it up, and optionally mill the other card. If the card you want to add is an event or a climax, move it to the top and draw it with the accessories event, optionally milling the other card as well. Either way, after playing the event, the Fern Brainstorm will give you further knowledge of the next 2 cards in your deck. If you see a climax and you don't want to draw it, mill the other card and then go for a Brainstorm. If you see 2 cards you don't want, you can either mill both of them and go for a Brainstorm, or if you're already all set up with attackers and climax combo, consider leaving them on top of the deck for guaranteed triggers. You can also use Fern to place a climax on top of the deck, then attack with an older woman Frieren first. You'll know exactly what you're putting into stock with Frieren's effect, saving you the misery of blind stocking an unknown climax. Finally, let's go into some alternative tech choices and build options. Keeping most of the deck intact, the finisher climax combo can be easily switched to the favorite magic Frieren combo. This combo trades the raw offensive power of the Trial Deck combo with a less powerful but more versatile finisher that also heals when played. If playing favorite magic Frieren as your finisher of choice, consider also adding in the defensive magic event from the Trial Deck to increase the number of different events, as well as providing a fallback plan for when the combo doesn't end the game. Frieren has a lot of strong utility and tech cards that I'm not featuring in this list, such as Winter Clothes Frieren for deck speed and selectivity, Victory and Morning Frieren as an added back row support card, Thinking Frieren to delete traits from your opponent's characters, the Party of Heroes Hider to search 2 cards on attack, and much more. If I went over every viable option you could play in this deck, I'd have a video just as long as Mike's product opening. Be sure to try the list out yourself and consider the options you have available, as well as what tools you'll need to fit your playstyle. Just like the magic in Frieren, sometimes unassuming and oddly specific tools are just what you need on your own adventure. Alright, that's it for this video. If you have any questions or comments about this list, let us know in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them as soon as possible. Coming up, we have lots of Frieren gameplay for you guys, so get subscribed and stay tuned. This has been Chairman on the Tressa's Collectibles channel, and we'll see you on the next one.